Facebook Friday, everybody. How's it going? It is Friday, and I am here with all of you. Super excited. And I'm really excited that I've got a good, object ID does not exist. I don't know if we went live. I have no
We're either
idea.
live or we're not live. One of those
Yeah.
two things is true.
And Maddie, if you could tell me if we're live, that would be so nice. Maddie is talking to me. Okay, we're live. I just can't see the comments right now. This is very
Kurt's just doing
weird.
this. He's like, we've been
Yeah.
live the whole time. Great.
Okay. All right. Well,
That's
let
awesome.
me share with you guys who I have with me today. I'll focus on trying to see the comments here in a little bit. But what I want to do is first off introduce you to my friend Dan. Dan is he's got a lot of software background with some really big companies that you've probably heard of. And we could get into all of that, but maybe just for the purposes of today that we're talking about hiring and processes and what's going to make things the best. Let me just say this. When Dan speaks, if you're smart, you'll listen because he's very smart. And I know he's humble, so he's getting ready to try to like tell me why that's not true. But Dan, the reason we had you on today and we're so excited is because right now is a very important time for businesses, cleaning companies, the ones I serve the most. It's the time where you're getting ready to go into the slow season and you're trying to figure out how you're going to keep your top talent and keep them around. And then it also means that you're going into the fall is going to be coming and you've got to have everyone trained, ready to go. These are the kinds of processes that people need to be preparing for right away. So what I'd like to do first is, Dan, can you tell us a little bit about how you got involved with HireBus and then a little bit about what that is? And then I know you kind of already prepared some things that I'm going to be asking you about, and then we can get into that after that. How's that sound?
That sounds great. But I want you to promise me one thing. I know we've talked about generally what we talk about. I want you to throw me some like curveballs, some weird ones. I want you to keep me on my heels a little bit so that we can make sure we're
No
providing.
one ever asks me to do this. This is
Yeah.
amazing.
That's when the best stuff, the real nuggets come out is when it's not just the pre-canned stuff or the stuff that I've shared at other speaking opportunities, etc. But anyway, so if you promise me that, then I'm good to go.
Okay, I promise. I promise.
Yeah. All right, cool. We'll shake on it. Hi everybody. My name's Dan. I'm the co-founder of HireBus. I love the virtual shake. And simply put, the way I got into HireBus was I was operating the Conquer coaching business for a few years. And when you see that many home service businesses and you see the real thing that is holding often people back or allowing them to really grow and scale or simply just have a lot of freedom, the one thing was having a hiring system. There's a lot of marketing systems. There's a lot of production systems. There's a lot of admin systems. There's a lot of sales systems. But having a true hiring system that isn't just an SOP, but is backed in data is what we saw working really well. And so we said, this is mission aligned, solving this more discrete problem. And there's some really cool technology out there. And I have a background in software development. So it seemed like a really cool problem to address. And it has been, and it's been amazing. It's been amazing just to like jump in and help a bunch of businesses have hiring systems that just run on autopilot.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, as you talk about systems and making hiring run on autopilot, I think that, responsibilities probably don't feel this way because they've seen what automations and autopilot can and is possible of doing. But a lot of people do hear, oh, autopilot means it's just going to be really inferior. And I think that that's kind of the key of what we're going to be getting into today is getting autopilot to do the best thing every single time and actually really getting what you want. I think most people do not have the energy and effort to do the things that we're going to do today on their own accord. But we'll talk about that as we go. So, Dan, what are the four things that I need? Can you just tell me maybe like four different things, essential things that I've got to know in order to hire the top talent? Do you have anything like that?
Yeah, well, we can talk about the four things, but there's really one thing that is the umbrella of the four. There's one really good thing. And I think a lot of people have heard this idea of like hire like a marketer. I know I've heard it and it kind of changed how I think of things. And in the last few years, I have a slight twist on that, which is hire like a great salesperson and marketer. And I think the concept of having sales and marketing together, your acquisition function of a business, and using that to drive your marketing or your hiring philosophy, excuse me, is what overrides all of these four key points. Um, and when you think of hiring in that way, all of a sudden building a system becomes not easy, but you have a clear frame of reference because you already have a sales and marketing system. If you have a business, you have a sales and marketing system. And so if you can think of what is similar to hiring to sales and marketing, then that's when we've seen folks really, really win. So item number one is make sure you have a huge top of funnel. And what that means is make sure you have access to a lot of candidates. Some will be great, some might not be so great, but if you have a ton of them, you're probably going to be able to find a really good person in the end. Number two is make sure you qualify those candidates. So you take all those candidates and you qualify them with systems, automations, AI, other tools, not your time. Your time is too valuable to be taking hundreds of candidates and prioritizing just the top few to interview.
And I don't want, and if I have to use my time, I don't want a big top of funnel. I don't want to go through a bunch of people. It actually incentivize me. If I'm going to be going through them individually, I'm incentivized to look at less people.
And that's what we see all the time. Like human nature is to give ourselves comfort, is to get things done. And so what I've seen is we've helped people write job ads like, oh man, that was awesome. I got 400 candidates for a technician role or a sales rep role. And then all of a sudden that creates another problem, which is like, ooh, I have 400 candidates. That's like, that could ruin your week, right? And if you don't handle that second problem right, then you might be undoing some good work. So that's why this number two piece of qualify with systems, not your time, is so important. And that's kind of why earlier I'm like, it's not just marketing, it's sales and marketing. Your sales process is where you qualify and prioritize the best leads, the best candidates, etc. So that's number two. You want number three?
I have so many questions about it, but I can tell you're going fast. We need to get this laid down. Do it. Just do it.
Okay. You want me just to do it? All right. I'll power through. Three, always keep it on. I won't go too deep, but just like marketing, you always got to keep it on. Even if you're booked out 6 weeks, you might not keep it on at the same volume, but you always want to keep systems on because switching costs are real. We get into that. And then number four is the world is always changing. And this is true of marketing and sales. You can't just run the same ad campaigns year over year over year. You can't do the same sales process year over year. People become numb to what they see, and marketing sales is all about getting attention. And that's the same thing in hiring. So like Kurt, if we do this 2 years from now, I bet I'll have somewhat different points, right? Probably. Some of the core concepts will probably be the same, but there's nuance. And so point number four is you need to always be learning. And we're going to talk about opportunities for that at the end. That's the fourth point. Done.
Okay. I have a very dear friend in the comments section. His name is Jason. Jason says, I use Career Plug. How are you different? I don't know anything about Career Plug. So do you know anything about what Career Plug is?
I don't know like a ton of the inner workings of Career Plug, but the main thing that we're different, there's a lot of like ATS's, applicant tracking systems out there. And there are also other hiring funnels out there, hiring automation systems. The main way that we differentiate ourselves is two parts. And I do want to come at this from like a hiring philosophy, and I'll happily talk about the HireBus product, but even if you don't use HireBus, cool, I want to help you with what we've learned. But from a HireBus product standpoint, number one is we use a behavioral assessment as part of the qualifying process so that you automatically, without using your time using systems, get a really detailed view of the candidate's behavioral profile so that you can know how best to prioritize them in your interview process. And then number two is like our mission is to serve the forgotten small business owner. And so we price ourselves very, very, very fairly and affordably because we know that if you could build a really great system, but if it takes a big piece of your bottom line, is that really helping your business? So we try to price very, very, very affordably based on our own cost structure in a way that we can deliver at volume.
Okay. Jason, I know Dan and I know Brandon Vaughn's a big part of this. I have some friends here that work here, and I know I've been around HireBus since the first time it was announced, which wasn't even HireBus at the time. It was just an assessment that was brought out by a psychologist at a Conqueror summit. But anyway, so I know a lot about how HireBus works, and I really love how easy it makes certain things. But I want to get into a question. Your first thing is make your funnel big. Make sure you're not using your time to narrow it down and get to use systems to get to that, final pull where you are going to put your energy, and then never turn it off. Keep it always going and refining it. So I get the big picture. I'm following,
Mhm.
but I cannot shake a feeling that I got when I first got into business, and that was give your people a bunch of hoops to jump through because those hoops will tell you who is willing to jump through hoops. And I always was a little like I saw like if I'm gonna get 400 applicants, I needed 400 uh hoops for people to jump through so that I could only, I just don't want to deal with all of them. But I always wondered, like, am I taking someone who's smart and does stuff smarter, not harder, and filtering them out because they have to type me a subject line? They got to read to the very bottom, read the fine print, do the things that have nothing to do with the job. But I need someone who pays attention to detail in an email that'll apparently tell me if they pay attention to detail and everything. And I need to make sure that they, just like a monkey, they do the thing that they're supposed to do. Then they got to call the phone and they got to leave a voicemail that says exactly a certain thing so that I can take them to the next part. I'm just curious what are your thoughts on making an applicant jump through lots of hoops? I mean, I realize that you're using systems to thin the herd, so I know that there's hoops people have to jump through, but
Mhm.
I'm not asking that question. I want to make sure you understand the question I'm asking is hoops for the sake of hoops. Do you understand my question? How do you feel
Yes.
about having a bunch of stuff that has to get done that's busy work just to get to those applicants?
This is an awesome question and one that I feel like we talk about all the time. Now, obviously there's nuanced answers, and I hate like overly political nuanced answers. And so I'll give you my like broad strokes answer right now, which is I don't think that's the best philosophy. I
Okay.
think you're I think you're assessing someone getting through a process versus you're assessing will they be a great, and I think it's really important to be specific, not employee. Will they be a great lead technician? Will they be a great production manager? Will
Uh,
they be a great office manager? Will they be a great sales rep? Whatever the role is. And I truly believe that you need to have qualifying stages that differ by role. And
okay.
so now going to the more nuanced answer, like, does it, and I'll ask you a question, Kurt. So you mentioned like secret codes, code words, listening to voicemails all the way through, things like that. And I've used those, and I don't think they're like terrible. But what does that assess? That assess someone's reading comprehension and their thoroughness,
Yeah.
which for a lead technician in a cleaning business, thoroughness is an important, and attention to detail, really important. Reading comprehension, I don't know. Like, and so you start to see, right? Like, and so I can see how like for a lead technician, that could be an okay step. What I might argue are better steps is figure out like, okay, what do you want this person to do in the role? And so number one, a behavioral assessment of some sort, that gives you a lot of data and it's cut by the role. So you can see empirically what's worked well based on their behaviors in the past for other roles. Okay, good. Next step, you might want to know, so that's their behaviors. You also might want to know about their experience. So do you want to do a one-way video interview where they have to answer some questions, such as responding to a customer complaint? If they're an office manager, responding to an email, a sales rep, handling an objection that you pre-record, that might be a better assessment of their skill that you can do in an intelligent, automated way, where now you're saying, okay, this lead technician can generally follow directions because they can apply and they took the assessment. Okay, they can also generally follow directions because they pulled out their camera and did a one-way video interview. Oh, and by the way, they're in like a well-lit place that's quiet, that's clean. They know how to present to a customer. And so now you're starting to get hoops, if you will, or stages that are more aligned to the role versus aligned to a process, frankly, that's just like easy to replicate.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Let's get into
Jason,
it, Kurt. I'm ready.
yeah,
I'm
I'm
stoked.
like, I
You
got a
got me
lot.
fired up with that first question.
You're killing me. This is so cool. So Jason Hatch is talking about the DISC assessment. He's like, hey, do you guys have the DISC assessment in there? Is that part of what you do? And I'll let you answer that question, but it's leading me with what you were saying already. So do you guys offer DISC as part of this?
So DISC is a separate assessment, although you can get a lot of the same outcomes from the DISC profile types as you can from a higher bus. DISC is like a publicly available assessment, and the foundation of higher bus, which is called the adjectives assessment, is also a publicly available assessment. Now, there's different companies that like have customized DISC to businesses, and actually, we didn't build the higher bus assessment. We didn't build the core of it. The adjectives assessment was taken by a company called Behavioral Essentials, and they customized that and made it for businesses, specifically large businesses and universities. And a handful of years ago, we started to partner with them to say, great, you've customized this for like boardrooms effectively. We want to customize it for the trades. And so we've done our own derivation of it from there. Where I'm getting with this is there's separate foundational assessments, but you can use them to understand very similar pieces. So for example, someone in DISC who's more of an I, there's certain behavioral traits in the higher bus assessment that can indicate that. But you get 21 scales versus those 4 levers.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and so it's slightly different, but you can get to the same outcome, which is like, how do I best communicate with people? How do people best communicate with me? What are areas where are my strengths? What are areas for growth? You can get all of that, but it's more specific to the trades and more specific to a wider number of like vectors, if you will.
And having used the higher bus assessment personally, those 21 things, they paint me a better picture. If someone's a high D or a high I or a high S or C, I got a pretty good idea of some things. But you could be a mousy C, or you could be a much more aggressive C, right?
Yeah.
And you can be the kind of D that wants to fight, and you could also be the kind of D who just really needs to make sure you understand what I'm saying, and I will never bullcrap you, right? You got the eyes that like want to be on a stage and everything, in a party and everything's great. And you have the other eyes that are just like people magnetized to them and they're inspirational, but they're not necessarily a personality. They just this is what happens. This is just how it goes. So anyway, those 21 things help me a ton. But that's getting my question. So now we're here. We're here at this point that I'm burning inside to ask. So again, I'll just tell you a quick personal experience. So when I first started hiring people, I thought I need to give them the hoops to jump through. The ones who make it through the hoops, I'm going to interview and I'm going to ask them questions that there's a right answer to. And essentially what I did was I built this maze so that the right person could get through the maze. And I did it for years. I did it for years that way. And I don't know where I read it. I think I found I don't know. I don't know where I read it. The point is I read something that said the interview is designed to discover, not to like lead, right? Like you're not trying to get them to tell you like, oh, are you the person I'm looking for? Because, and this was not what I read, this is just my observation. Anyone in an interview is a liar. The moment you're in an interview, you're the highest, and it's not because you're a liar person. It's because I need to show you the best version of myself. I got to make sure I project I'm on my A game, but nobody's on their A game all the time. So when they're in an interview, you're getting a best represented version of that person. And if you said, is there any instance where you would ever tell a lie? Well, what do you want them to say? Like in the interview, yeah, sometimes I lie. I'm about a 50-50 kind of person. About 50% of the time I'll tell the truth.
Too much. I care too much.
What's your biggest weakness? I care too much. I work too hard. Yeah. And when you ask the question that has the right answer, you get that. And they make it through your maze, they get the cheese at the end, and you're like, oh, you're hired. Congratulations. I liked you. And then I also, you gave me all the right answers. Or in the case of someone who only got 3 applicants, you gave me more right answers than anyone else. That's another one, right?
Yeah, you're the best mouse. You're the top scoring mouse out of the 3.
Top scoring mouse.
Even if you didn't get to the cheese, we'll give it to you.
Yeah, because I'm not going to go through this process 20 more times or 100 more times, right? Yeah. So, okay. So that's the context. You get these personality assessments, DISC or otherwise, adjective assessments, and you learn about somebody on who they actually are. right? You figure out what they value. Are they a value alignment? You don't just say, here's all my values. Do you not like my values? That's not going to work.
Yeah.
But hey, what do you value? Or maybe another question might be one of the ones that I've found is like, what kinds of things really irk you? Like what's something that really rubs you wrong so that you know it's answer about? Well, I don't like when people are late. Okay, so you value being on time. You value being prompt. I really can't stand it when people tell lies. Well, that's a good thing to say in an interview. Let's keep going. So my question is, as you uncover who somebody actually is through some sort of an assessment, where there isn't a right answer, I'm just trying to discover you. What is the process of aligning that discovery? And I know it's not fair because you're higher bus. So you're like, I just put that discovery into the map and it tells me, but like, how is the average person supposed to take that discovery and align it with if they're a good fit for what I'm trying to actually get?
Yeah. I'm going to give you, this is another fantastic question. And I'm going to give you an answer that like might shock you.
Okay.
I think if the only data point you collected was a higher bus assessment, a Colby assessment, a DISC assessment, any assessment, if the only data point you collected was that assessment and then just hired, you wouldn't find great people. In the same way that if the only data point you got was a resume, or the only data point you got was one phone interview, or the only data point you got was one ride along, the way to really, in my experience, in my opinion, hire well is when you collect these data points and you build a map and a picture, because no single one can give you a full picture and the full answer. Even if you break it down to like some bad interview questions that we've all asked, some hiring processes, like, as you were talking about like jumping through hoops or some of those interview questions, I was like, I've literally asked those interview questions like hundreds of times. And so
thank you for
this
your
is all
kindness.
a work in progress. And I still ask stupid interview questions and I still do stupid things, even though I focus on this all the time. But my point here is like, it's about collecting multiple data points efficiently and intelligently so that you can make the best guess possible. You will never, ever, ever be certain that a person is going to work out great. But if you can collect as much information as possible and get to that 95, 96, 98% certainty, you're in business.
Okay,
And
you're using a term here that's not fair. You're saying 98, 96% certainty. Where are you translating these discoveries into certainty? Now, I realize maybe your answers are going to be like, well, Kurt, do you realize about higher bus? I can actually input this data and get to 96% certainty. But the average human who's looking at their own process without any aid of AI or technology, how are we translating these data points into certainty?
I think we naturally do it. And that's why the interview stages are something that like everyone does. And that's why hoops are so appealing. Let's go back to marketing and sales, right? Okay. So we'll use a proxy here, marketing and sales. Okay, you're running your cleaning business, or you can be responsible for your cleaning business, whatever.
No, let's use cleaning business. That's cool.
Okay, let's go to your cleaning business. Okay, you did a door hanger and someone scans a QR code and you get that. What's your certainty that they'll become a customer at that point from a scan?
Maybe 30% certainty, probably.
Cool. Then they filled out the lead form after the scan and gave you their phone number and address for an estimate. What's the certainty then?
Oh, okay. Yeah, actually, I was thinking they scanned the lead form. So maybe I was like previously like 10% certain, but now I'm like 30% certain.
Okay. And I think you know where I'm getting with this. You send out an estimator, they respond. So it goes up, right? That's what I'm getting at until eventually they're a customer. And even then, even when you do the job, there's like still a 90-something% certainty that they'll be a good customer because they might leave you a bad review. They might do a callback. They might vent to friends and say, so up until they've become a customer and they've been a long-standing customer who even refers work, is that 100% certainty that they're like your ideal customer. Okay. And it's the same thing with hiring. And I think that's why the hoops are so appealing to us, because it's like, oh, someone looked at my job ad. That's 10% that they might be a good candidate. Oh, they did hoop one. That's 20%. All the way. They came in they actually showed up to an interview. Oh my gosh. And
Yeah.
like, depending on what your system is, someone actually showing up to an interview could either be like a 40% certainty or a 95% certainty because you're so starved for good candidates. And this goes to my point of the data piece is if you can make those stages, just like your sales and marketing cycle, more concrete, more aligned to what it means to be a good employee versus someone that you give a job to, that's when you can get to those percentage certainties. And yes, like we are trying very hard to figure it out more empirically. We're getting data feedback loops. But this is why this is an interesting problem to solve in my mind, because X years ago, it was just like stage one, stage two, stage three, stage four, they're hired. But now we can take the data and look back and say, oh, were they a good employee? What made them a good employee? What behaviors in the interview? What way they answered questions? So we can actually inform the process instead of saying, tweak the process instead of saying, oh yeah, they replied to the voicemail. They actually showed up to the interview and they said, I care too much when they asked what their biggest weakness is. You're hired.
Oh,
So I
that's
hope that answered
100%.
your question. My like
It
rambling.
does.
Sorry.
No,
Everyone got a
actually,
glimpse of the chaos that is my
I,
mind there.
I'm going to return back to what you said in some of my own words and just, see if I think I'm totally aligned with you, is that we naturally will kind of do these things the best that a human can.
Yeah.
But it really does require, like when you kept talking about, what certainty if they do this and if they do that and they do that, become a customer. Well, I have data points for that. Like
Mhm.
if you asked me before I ever had data, oh, someone scanned my code. Oh my gosh, once they see, they're coming on. Um, and then
Yeah.
and then like I learned later through business, like, oh, actually everyone scans code and doesn't necessarily do anything with it. Oh, they filled out the form. So I think as I repeat this back to you, I think what I'm hearing is that you'll probably do as good as anybody with your own natural inclination by just collecting a bunch of data points. And some people say they're a good judge of character, and even those people really aren't. And then some people are have a lot of experience and they've seen a lot of things, and that will go towards things. But when you have all of the data of a bunch of other people in one big pool, and you can compare yours to the experiences of many other people, not only do you get a much larger pool of data points to compare against, which is sort of the beauty of Higher Bus, but probably even more importantly than that is that you're actually seeing the results of what other people are getting. It's not just comparing against other data points, it's comparing the experiences of those data points with other people. And, I guess I really hadn't given that the weight until you were saying that. And I thought, okay, you're only going to have so much experience. Multiply that by 10,000 people. That's a lot of experience. Your gut's going to be better. But then if you go back to the experience that's quantified and we've actually put numbers to it, there's no gut left. You're not trusting anything.
Yeah. And you still need to like make an ultimate decision.
Yeah.
Just like, technicians need to ultimately perform a job. You need to still like deliver and make an ultimate decision. But wouldn't you want yourself to have all the information possible to make that decision? Like
Yeah.
we've seen this revolutionized in sales over the last decade with companies like Gong, now Rilla in home services, where it's like this process of sales, which there's all these great sales coaching techniques to make sales like systematized. But I think at the end of the day, and I don't want to speak for everyone, part of what I've understood is like some people can just sell, right? Like
Yeah.
some people are just great. And it's like, well, why is that? And now we're starting to get data on it where we understand talk time. We understand speed of speech at different parts in the sales cycle. We talk about speeding things up. We talk about slowing things down. We talk about when do you put X, Y, and Z. And so if we apply that same framework where it's like, I'm just a really good hirer. I believe that some people are. I believe that some people are really good judge of character. But like, do you want to rely on that? Why wouldn't you rather have a
Yeah.
system that has data? And like
Yeah.
in the same way that we have all this data in marketing and sales, let's get that for hiring. Let's get that for production. Let's get that for every function of our business. So when we look at things, we can pair our logical brain that knows numbers, et cetera, with our experienced feeling brain that has intuition as a leader. And that's when you make really good decisions. Because if you just do one or the other, it doesn't work out. That balance, in my opinion, is required.
Well, it goes back to like people think that if they get a money mark or mutual fund or get their 401k funds by like people with a lot of experience. Those people have a lot of experience, but oftentimes they can't beat the market. I mean, in fact, my understanding is that no one ever over any very large extended period of time has ever beat the market by just pulling stocks in and out of their mutual funds. And the reason is because you take that expert, even if they're asking their friends, the market will work better together when you have that much data together. It's just too big, too much, and it will eventually always win. It's just crazy to think about that.
Do you remember? I don't know if you heard about this, but it was back in like 2010. Warren Buffett bet some hedge fund manager is like Warren Buffett, the king of passive investing, hedge fund active investing. And he was like, all right, I'll bet you that if I just put the same amount of money in the S&P 500 from 2010 to 2020, it'll beat your fund. And the loser has to donate $1 million to the charity of the winner's choice. Of course, Warren Buffett won. Donate, and it's just one of those things where, what I love about that is, yes, we can all look retroactively at charts and be like, oh, actually, passive investing is better than active investing because I can look at the data. But I love that balance of like, I know this, I know that empirically this is. I also know the future could be a little different, and I know that there's some uncertainty here, but I'll use my like feeling and logic brain, or sorry, my feeling and leadership brain to be like, yeah, I'll put my money where my mouth is, and let's do this thing. And I thought that was a good example of that, of like that phenomenon that you're talking about.
Well, cool. So we're applying financial principles to hiring, and I think it's
Yeah,
just
we've got.
but it's a true principle. I'm good with it. I don't think we have anything to apologize for. But I do want to go back to the comments. One of our commenters said, I hire on culture, not talent. And I think that's an interesting conversation for us to have
Yeah.
because you can find the smartest person in the room, and if they don't fit your culture, that can be cancerous, right? And then, so I want to come to that. Also, I
Yeah,
want to point
I
out
would
that
love to talk about that.
Brant just came in here. Brant from Jill's office says, "Wow, the
Oh,
two
Brent.
smartest guys I know." Sorry, I'm late to the party.
Oh my
Um,
God.
well,
Brant. We gotta get him on
Brant,
here. Brant knows a thing or two about hiring.
yeah, a thing or two. Yeah, actually, Brant knows a bit, but we should have Nicole on here. She knows a thing or two about
Yeah,
hiring.
Nicole's the genius.
That's the genius of Brant. He hired Nicole, and now Nicole is his genius that works for him. So, okay. So let's talk about hiring for culture. So you talked about having a big old funnel and
Mhm.
we catch as many leads as we can, which I know I'm going to this other question first, but I do want to come back to the question of how the heck are you making your funnel so big? But we'll have to get back to that later. So we got
Yeah,
this big old
we'll hit
funnel.
that. And I can hit some tactical things to that too, probably. That might help
Okay.
folks.
So people start coming through the funnel and we have systems thinning this down to the people we're actually going to talk to. First of all, Mike, I have a two-part question. The first one is, do you agree that you hire for culture and not talent? And then if you do or don't, tell me about the process of trying, like how do you thin people down on that?
Yeah. So in broad strokes, I'll give my non-political answer and then I'll give a more like nuanced answer. I do agree. I might push back on the fact that like culture and talent being opposites or somehow not the same thing. Like maybe I'd say like technical skill versus culture. Because I think that's like someone who understands how to operate in your culture and in a culture and has a aligned culture. I think that is talent. And I think that is really
Okay.
important. Um, so so yes, I think that's very important. And I think this is why it's so important to collect multiple data points again. Like you wouldn't be able to truly understand culture if you just had a full-on skills assessment. And by a skills assessment, I mean that can mean a lot of things. That can mean a ride along. That could mean having an office manager answer example emails for you so you can just see how they might respond. This is why it's important to have multiple data points. The beauty of a behavioral assessment is that you get indicators of culture in there. So a concrete example of this is one of the behavioral scales in HireBus is a score of free spirit. And what free spirit measures is your interest in engaging in like fun and free-flowing ideas versus your interest engaging in more like rigid, serious ideas. I have worked in places where both very successful companies, and I've consulted for very large companies that have very different cultures on that spectrum, high free spirit and low free spirit. And it doesn't mean one's good and one's bad. And I think in this example, it might be like, oh, free spirit's fun. Actually, too much free spirit cannot be that fun, especially for certain people. And so it's it's a really good example of getting a data point on, and you have to know yourself. Like, this person scores really high in free spirit. Is that going to work here or not work here? That has no bearing on their ability to perform a task. That's a culture item. I'll pause because I feel like you have a question.
I'm looking at my assessment real quick because
Yeah,
I'm like dying to know. I can't remember where my free spirit is at. So no, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm gonna.
Okay, I was gonna pull up. Sorry, that's my squirrel brain going, which is probably not frustrating for some people to work with me. So you can figure out culture. Now, do I think you can figure out if someone's a perfect cultural fit from just looking at an assessment that took them 5 to 10 minutes to take? No. I think you'll get a pretty good idea. I think you'll get 70, 80% of the way there. But that last 20%, you need to figure out with other data points. An interview, a ride along is a fantastic way to figure out if someone's a cultural fit. Are they at every stop on their phone? Are they, even if they're not like responsible for doing a job, helping at least carry stuff out of the truck? You'll learn a lot about culture with these other data points. How do they show up on a one-way video interview or even a Zoom? Is their background tidy? Is there noise in the background? Cue my dog about to bark, probably. No. So these cultural pieces are all data points that you gather. And I think the initial question is like, is it better to hire culture and skill? I tend to lean, and I think it very much depends on role, like, and your own systems. Are you equipped to teach skill? Are you in a position to teach skill? I personally, Dan, this is not like, I personally would prioritize hiring on cultural generally, but there are some roles that skill is really important. And what I do in those high skill roles, like high technical expertise roles, is I don't go for vanilla or chocolate. It needs to be both. It needs to be a swirl. And so the only way to do that is to get a huge top of funnel and have really good qualifying systems. Because if you just hire for one or the other in those types of roles, you can really, really experience a bad time. Either someone that's a great fit who can't deliver, or someone who can deliver but isn't a good fit. And so those are the roles where you gotta like really have a dialed-in system.
Yeah. Actually, I know that you really hedged yourself on that one by going the swirl route. But the fact is that you're right. I'm looking at, by the way, I looked up my free spirit.
Oh, what is it?
Quick guess. What do you think? What do you think my free spirit's at?
I bet you're like 94.
Oh wow, that's very nice of you. I really wish I was a free spirit. I'm 78. I mean
that's very high. That's very high.
Okay.
Yeah. I think we're both, I believe we're both in the 70s because I love a good free spirit, but sometimes I'm like,
we got to get to it. Like it's time to get.
You got to do it. Let's go. Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about the top of funnel. So we're kind of getting towards the end here of the time that most people will stick around for a Facebook Live. By the way, thanks you guys for engaging in the comments. I appreciate all of you guys' engagement here, and I hope you're getting as much out of this as I am. But Dan, I do think that one of the beautiful things, you've done a good job, by the way, of not trying to talk about HireBus and like make it about the product. But I have actually seen throughout this conversation is like, yeah, this is just something that has to be done this way in order for you to hire in today's economy the right way, especially because training is so expensive. But I will say I've always struggled, Dan, always to last month. I have struggled to think about how I would get a big funnel. If my employee refers a friend to me, they're already 75% of the way through the finish line, just because I know that my culture has brought them to me. And I've always thought that that's a fine measurement. We'll do all my discovery questions, and then I'll try and take those discovery questions and, figure out, and I do run them through the HireBus assessment too, by the way. But I've never, I as a HireBus user, I don't hire enough. Like I don't have a company where I lose all my, most of my employees have been with me for many years. So, I do think this is an area I would love to learn a little more, and I think a lot of people would love to learn more. How do we get the top of our funnel so big?
Yeah, this is a really good question. And to give a little insight into HireBus, like this was a question that last fall, a lot of our users were asking, like, the assessment's great. I'm getting a ton of information about people. That's awesome. But in order to have people take the assessment, I need to have a candidate. And it's really hard to get candidates. And so we set out to solve that problem. And so earlier on, the umbrella of all these ideas is hiring is good, sales and marketing. And so just like your business, you need to have multiple channels. And if we want to think of it as in a simple way, think of it as like paid and organic, or inorganic and organic, but paid is an easier way to think. Paid and organic. And organic is awesome. Like organic is great because it's cheap. There's a closeness to you. And we think about organic like leads and marketing in our businesses as referrals, people, friends and family, repeat customers, right? Things like that. So let's do a proxy of that for hiring. Referrals of employees, maybe someone who you serve, maybe someone in your community that you know from church or wherever it may be, or the gym or whatever. So, and early on in a business, that's going to be where a lot of your candidates come from.
Yeah, it's true.
It's warm, it's easy. You don't have that much volume. And it's the same thing with leads. Early on in your business, you're doing a lot of organic. So you need to have those functions running, and most businesses generally do. And one of the things that we like to do is all of our hiring funnels, people can enter from paid, but they can also enter from organic. And it's really important that you keep that organic channel going because those are typically lower volume, but higher quality
Yeah,
people.
I would agree with that too. Yeah, for sure.
Now, there is a pitfall and a trap is like you can, if you like someone, it's nice to give. And a lot of business owners are givers. That's part of why you do it. You like to create. So you can often be like, oh, they're such a good person, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, if you really want to get where you've never been before, you might need to go outside your comfort zone in terms of who you bring on. And so this is sometimes why a paid channel can be really good. So paid is, in my opinion, the real way to get a huge top of funnel because it's something that you can control with two things: really good skill in writing ads and money, like bluntly. And so that's the power of a lot of these funnels is from a skill side. When you literally have hundreds of funnels active across the country for different roles, you start to learn what works and what doesn't. And so you have a good starting point for what job ad systems and types work. And if you actively change and update those job ads on different platforms, Indeed, ZipRecruiter, LinkedIn, the algorithm says, oh, these guys are active on our platform. We want people to be on Indeed. We want people here. So they put it to the top. And so what we found is a pretty simple, good formula is write really compelling job ads based on what works for our whole user base. Number two, update those ads frequently with true A/B marketing tests. Should you put the salary in the title or no? Looking for lead technician starting at 25 an hour or lead technician? Depends. I don't know yet about your market, but I do know that change can have a big impact. So I'll test that.
Now, you're editing the same ad. You're not running two ads competing with each other. You're just editing the same ad over time.
We do run A/B tests. We will run competing ads.
Okay.
Yeah. And then typically what we'll do is when you find one that's working well and getting you a cost per lead that's like above top of market, we'll run with that so that we can concentrate people into that one that works.
Okay.
And then the final thing is spend. Like at a certain point, you can lever up and down spend based on your needs. We saw an influx of people about a month ago who were like, great, I've got like my core team, I want to focus on production, et cetera. And so we ramped their Indeed spend down to free. And what's great about that is you can still update the ads, you can still get them out there and still get candidates flowing through, still get a waiting list, but you're not spending extra dollars. And so that's what's cool about these running a funnel, just like marketing, is if you're booked 6 weeks out, would you stop running ads? No, but you might spend a little less, or you might say, we're booked 6 weeks out, let's get another truck on the road and let's spend, but at least you can modulate your inflow by your ad spend. And it's the same thing with candidates.
So how many are what are the big outlet? Like where are we publishing? And then if you could also, this might be an unfair question. It's fine. Tell me if it is. You've talked about Indeed, you've talked about some of these other places. Where are the big places we're going to get the big exposure? And what kind of money are we thinking about using for, we'll use lead technician because you keep using that one. And I think that's
Yeah.
a really reasonable one.
Yeah, lead tech's a good one. So Indeed is where we were finding like 80% of candidates, specifically for like technician and sales rep roles. Um, the thing about Indeed that's good is you can get good volume. You can also get some great quality and some bad quality. So it's high volume. If it can be really expensive if you don't manage your ads well. But if you manage your ads right and you have a good qualifying process, it's fantastic because you can get really good candidates like $1 per lead, $2 per lead. We've seen some spikes in recent months where it has gone up, and I'll talk about those metrics in a second, just so folks can get like a benchmark. ZipRecruiter is not quite as good and it's more expensive than Indeed. And actually, they post on other job boards. So,
Oh, oh, they
so
do.
they're more of like a proxy to other job boards
Oh,
versus having
I
their
did
own
not.
dedicated one. Yeah, they do both. And then LinkedIn is not typically great for like production teams. Like we've had some luck with office managers, but we largely stay away from LinkedIn. Um, so in terms of paid channel, Indeed is like the big kind of the gorilla in the room, and
Okay.
we found a lot of success posting with them. In terms of spend, and it's actually like gone up in the last month. So in February-ish time, it was about $1 per lead for a lead technician, so $1 per candidate. So say you wanted to run a funnel where you wanted to hire a lead technician. What we've seen, I can actually pull up like the exact numbers from February right now. That'd be helpful.
I don't think you ought to do that. I mean,
Okay,
you're, you're talking about
I got
like
him. It
you're
was
painting a picture for me
256.
where if I go to Indeed with $400 in my pocket and I have a way to get those 400 leads narrowed down, I can for $400. I mean, I don't know if people watching this are thinking the same way as me, but like that's pretty encouraging to think that even $200, I could walk away very confidently knowing that as long as I'm not using my time to thin it down and I'm using my systems like you were talking about in your steps, like I'm gonna get an amazing employee.
Yeah, for $400 of ad spend, you'll get a very, very strong employee. And like some really competitive markets, like a Seattle, like if you're in like Metro Seattle, might be 500. It depends on your trade and business, depending on the market. But like 250 to 400 is that's going to capture 90% of business we serve, as that's a really good ad spend to get that 250-ish candidates you need, 300 candidates to have a very, very, very healthy competitive hiring process.
Okay. Well, we kind of got to wrap this up,
Yeah,
but
we really,
Dan, we've talked
we,
about
we did.
Hyperbus.
Yeah. Oh no, that's great. I was thinking we got to like point one, which is awesome because it shows how deep and
Oh yeah, yeah.
how like awesome and how I love the philosophy of all this. It's just like a really deep, important topic. So I'm glad that we went deep instead of just skimming each little
And
number.
I think that if you understand point one, points two and three and four, like they point one teaches you that. Like
Hmm.
if you want to bring in a lot of people, you can't thin it out by yourself, and you must keep going. Like it's not going to happen in a day or two. And then I think that talking about I would love to have a discussion with you at some point about, I'm fully staffed. Why am I still having people go through this process if I'm fully staffed? And I think that would be a fun conversation. But I just think it would be crazy for us to get to the end of this and not talk, like we've talked about how you can restore a car, and we keep alluding to this amazing tool that you could use to do it, but we haven't really talked about it. So can we just real quick? I know as a higher bus user myself, you already mentioned it's affordable. I agree. It's very affordable. Um, there's a lot of people who are going to need to start getting this tool ramped up and ready to go, so they can be ready for fall. And frankly, if I was in the middle of summer and I had a problem, I would love to know that I could just turn a faucet on. Can you talk a little bit about how people could learn more about higher bus, and maybe even like before you do that, maybe just give me some executive summary elevator pitch on how you would describe higher bus, and then we can kind of get into how people could actually learn more.
Yeah. So I think the elevator pitch and how we describe HireBus is we will implement a done for you hiring system in your business where we post job ads, we nurture candidates, we have them take a HireBus assessment, which is like the core unique thing we do. We schedule them on your calendar so that you can just pick the best of that top 3% of candidates and bring them on without having to log into Indeed, without having to send texts and emails. They just literally get scheduled on your calendar and you interview them and make a decision. Now, the unique mechanism is what we talked about a lot, which is the HireBus assessment. You can hire people to post job ads and write them. You can hire people to message people. You can hire people to schedule interviews. But what's really powerful and makes HireBus unique is that we have a behavioral assessment that has been taken millions of times, been around for decades, and we've taken all that data and customized it to the trades, and we continue to update it based on the data so that you're getting a true prioritization of the top percentile of folks in services. In terms of pricing, we have two offerings. We have unlimited assessments. If you already have like a really good hiring system that's automated that you love and you just want to plug in the assessment, it's $149 a month. Unlimited assessments, no contract. I never wanted to run a gym where people just sign up and never show up. So if you're not using it, that's fine. You can cancel. And then number two is our done for you hiring system, where you get access to the platform, you get unlimited assessments, but we'll also post job ads, nurture candidates, have them take a HireBus, have them schedule on your calendar for one role. And additional roles you can scale up or scale down as you need. And that's $497 a month. So $150 a month if you want to plug it into your process, $500 a month if you want a system that does everything for you and is basically like hiring an HR person.
And if I hire that HR person, I know that in our world, people get really busy and do a lot of hiring and then they turn it off for a while. You've talked about leaving it on. I guess my question is, like, if I'm paying, roughly $500 a month, is that something I need to have on like that all year? Is there any kind of contract with that, or how do people look at that?
I would ask you like, okay, so maybe in the winter, like the 3 months in the winter,
Uh-huh.
you're like, why do I need to leave this on? Oftentimes that's actually like one of the better times
Yeah,
to
I heard
build a
this.
waiting list of talent. And so if I could say, okay, the 3 months in the winter, you paid $1,500 to like guarantee that you wouldn't have hiring problems for the rest of the year. If I gave you just that trade-off, you'd probably say, of course, $1,500 to like literally not have this problem come May or June.
Yeah.
You'd be like if I asked the June version of you that, Kurt, you'd be like, yeah, duh, take my money and genie and solve the problem. And if you ask January you might say, no, that doesn't make any sense. So that's what we like. That's what I would advocate for, and that's what I've learned from experience, and that's what I've learned from coaching. But we do have it such that if you do want to pause, you can pause. If you do want to downgrade, you can downgrade. It just there's switching costs in starting and stopping up a system in your own business. And so, I'd like recommend folks think about that because having a system that runs year round is really the secret sauce, really where you level up, really where you get that deep waiting list, especially in winter. But yeah, there's no commitment, and that's something we're proud of.
That's very cool. Yeah, for those of you who are watching, I think that is probably the note we should end on, is that if you don't have a system to do the most important things in your business, you're having to reinvent the wheel all the time, and you're not being fed. I mean, think about all the things that you have systems for. You have systems to get yourself fed every day, right? You have systems to make sure that your kids get to school on time. The things that are important in your life, you systematize so that it will happen. And I would say that that's one thing I've definitely learned as a business owner, is that if I care about it, it's got a system. And if I don't care about it, well, that doesn't mean it's not important, So.
Yeah. Should have a system.
All right. Well,
That's
Brant just
awesome.
said we use it for Jill's office, and we want to use it for Thurgood Creamery. So that's really cool.
Yeah. That's
Nice.
awesome, Brant. Yeah, you guys are awesome partners. It's cool. It's cool to see your data. Just be like, wow, they are growing and serving a lot of people.
Very cool. Well, everybody, thank you for joining us for our Facebook Live today. And I am looking forward to next week, which I can't remember. Let's see here. Next week. All right. Next week, actually, it looks like it's on Flag Day, and I am going to be on a little family vacation. So I will be missing you guys, it looks like, next week. But I am super excited to also tell you about one last thing, and that is the webinar that is coming up. It's a webinar that actually Brandon is representing HireBus at. It's the Power Up webinar that includes Brandon from HireBus, Angela from Unique Genius, Nicole and Michelle Jepson from Jill's office, and they're basically going to be teaching you about navigating the 10 points of hiring and retaining top talent. So we got some really smart people in the room. I know we've covered a lot of that today, but one of the things that they're going to be covering in kind of a wide range is that the importance of this top talent. How are you finding people who are able to do a lot more than maybe just a technical role, maybe, or I should say technician role, maybe something that's a little bit more of a upper management role or something like that. So that's going to be fantastic with a bunch of awesome people. That is coming up on, let me get the date for you on that. Do you have the date already?
I've got it.
Okay.
Thursday, the 13th at 1 Mountain.
1 Mountain. So if you're on Pacific, that is going to be noon. And if you're on Eastern, that's 3 p.m. So very, very cool. Very excited for what that, and that's actually sponsored by the Collective, which, by the way, Dan and I both serve in the Collective. It's an amazing organization designed to help you guys that are running businesses out in the field to level up using the experience of lots of other business owners like yourself. And thanks for whoever on my team just shared that link out. Thank you. Go to that link, register, get yourself into that webinar. It's free of charge. You're going to love it. And we will see you guys not next week, but the week after that. And we'll talk to you later. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Kurt.